All right. Hello, world. Welcome back to the Resistance podcast. It's been a couple weeks.
Been a few weeks, yeah. We've
What
been
is this,
super
episode
busy.
6?
I think it's 8 or 9.
Episode 9?
You'll see in the description
See
anyway.
in the description.
Yeah.
You know better than we do. We took a few weeks off.
We did. We've been busy.
We've been busy. We've
Some of us have been away. Yeah.
Tough. Yeah, some of us. Some of us here in the room. It's good to be back.
Yeah, yeah.
What's this question you have for me, Thurston?
So, yeah.
I think I know what it's going to be.
About your bench press.
Yeah, I knew it.
Yeah,
I knew
yeah.
it. It's the only thing he's been proud of so far. He just keeps bringing it up.
No, it is very impressive. So tell us the story about your bench press and what's happened.
Yeah, I'll tie it in. So I bench press. A lot of us bench press. It's a nice exercise. But so I had been maxing out around, like on a standard bench press, not Vitruvian. Like I think my 1 rep max was 270. And that was like a one-time, all-time max. And then I've been really working on the super maximal eccentric on the Vitruvian, and so I've been cranking that up, and so then I was able to get my standard bench press up to 3 reps of 295, and now we're doing like 345 on the eccentric.
Wow.
It's pretty good.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but I think the eccentric stuff has really taken my strength up on that.
Yeah, so I mean, and for those that haven't been listening to the podcast or the first one, eccentric is the negative. So most people are focused on pushing and lifting weights. Yeah. And we obviously went big into the research on the very first podcast, which is all about, it's actually on the way back down, or the negative, or the what's technically called eccentric, has more of an effect. And the great thing is we're stronger.
Yep.
So you've been just doing a lot more eccentric. And what's interesting is that's improved your concentric. In other words, you're now able to jump up your which is basically, I mean, if you can do 3 reps at 295, your 1 rep max is going to be over 300 now, I'm guessing.
I hope so.
Yeah, so you should do that soon. That would be awesome.
I need to do it just so everyone knows, just so I can tell people.
That's a massive jump at that level, and that's only in a few months.
I've also been training for years, and to have that much of, to add 40 pounds to a bench press in a few months, that's a huge strength jump for someone that's been training for a long time.
Yeah, and that's just
pretty
from
awesome.
the eccentric. Because eccentric is great as well for people who've trained for a lot and they get to a bit of a sticking point, because it's this extra dimension. And that's the awesome thing, because on average people are anywhere, it depends on the exercise and the muscle, but about 25 to 50% stronger lowering a weight than lifting a weight. So it allows you to kind of get a heavier load onto the muscle and the joints and everything.
To the lifting.
Yeah, and that's what the research shows, that if you increase your strength eccentrically, that improves your concentric strength. But it doesn't happen the other way around, which is interesting. Because if you just did concentric, it doesn't necessarily, or doesn't improve your eccentric strength as much. So
yeah, it also feels like it's been a really safe way to up my weight, because before I've injured myself, like small tweaks with wrists and stuff, trying to max out on bench press, because maybe I was stronger, but my joints hadn't caught up. And so being able to overload on the eccentric has gotten me like feeling pretty bulletproof in the joints.
Yeah.
So then when I went for the real thing, I was like, oh, no problem.
Yeah,
Which is nice, because it's just used to that amount of force.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's fantastic. Cool.
Thanks. Shout out to my bench press. Appreciate that.
Well, that's an impressive, way more than I can do in the bench press. I'm going to have to start to test my bench press strength, because I'm doing the eccentric not as much as you, although I'm good on the row. But
I knew it. I was like, in a second, he's going to talk about the row. It was that was all just a tee up, actually, to get into your, how much do you row, Thurston?
No, it's okay. Jump on. Well, I mean,
3 big ones, 300.
3 on the eccentric. Yeah, on the eccentric. But that Vitruvian is just awesome for that, because it just opens that whole eccentric training up to in a way that's just never been possible before. Yeah. Obviously, it's fantastic. It's
pretty awesome.
Yeah. So, and there's been a lot of stuff I've come across a lot lately, just even in the last week, a lot of great information coming out about the importance of increasing muscle and strength, even above fat loss, which is interesting. So there was a great video, just came out a couple of days ago, the guy who does the What I've Learned, we do a link in the notes, and he talks about, is it the fat or is it the muscle? In other words, if we increase and focus on the strength and muscle, that's actually more important than the obesity or losing the fat. So it's kind of interesting. And I know Mike Mutzel, he did a great video about a week ago all about weight loss and the importance of maintaining muscle. Because there's a lot of these new drugs out, the Ozempics and all of these things.
Yeah, we were talking about that this morning.
Yeah, and look, I can't tell you exactly the details of it, and talk to your doctor, etc. But a lot of the research is showing that when people lose weight on average with these, because they're sort of appetite, they control your appetite so that you eat less. So you do lose weight with these drugs, but a lot of the weight loss is muscle.
Yep.
And then the problem is, are you going to maintain that? And the answer is generally no. So a lot of people end up putting the weight back on again. Yeah. Because the muscle is what burns fat. So if you lose muscle while you lose weight, and that's the biggest issue when people are trying to lose weight. There's definitely the two components. Your appetite is a huge part, and we did a whole episode on this. But then, of course, your metabolism, which is based on your muscle. Yeah. So that's really important.
We talked about that a lot in the diet podcast, and just it's such a shame because people will tell you now, don't go on a diet, because if you do, you're just going to gain back more fat afterwards. And it's like, no, it's because you're not dieting properly. You're losing you're starving yourself. You're losing all your muscle, and you're crapping out your metabolism.
Yeah, it's great to see, and there really seems to be sort of a switch in understanding. Eventually, I've been doing this for decades, and we've always emphasized with the muscle. For health benefits and metabolic health, but definitely for weight loss, you got to maintain, preferably even increase the muscle while you lose the fat. And that's going to keep your metabolism up and keep the weight off long term. Because it's like Dr. Gabrielle Lyons, she's did a whole TED talk on this as well, and she's been kind of getting the message out there. Dr. Peter Attia talks a lot about it, the vital importance of when you're losing weight, that it's fat loss, not weight loss. So it's great to see so much information getting out there. I feel like there's a bit of a switch. In general, the consensus is, we know this, and there's a lot of good scientific articles on it. And Mike Mutzel talked about one that came out about a year and a half ago, all about weight loss and why most of it is just so unsuccessful because people are losing the muscle and strength. And that's literally accelerating the aging process, which is a disaster.
We should definitely put links to those videos in the notes.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So that's been what's I've been seeing a lot of lately.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
I think there's kind of a switch happening in the fitness world.
Yeah, because that's obviously our number one intervention is resistance training, and that's why we focus on that so much. And it'd be great for everyone to really get that message, because most people, again, they're still, I just burn off calories, do lots of aerobics and cardio, and I'll starve myself, but they all end up losing the muscle, accelerating the aging process, reducing the metabolism, and it's a disaster. So
don't do it. Lift weights or resist weights. Haha, teed up. Anyways, what are we talking about today, Thurston?
So today, going through more of the psychology in terms of behavior change.
Nice.
And priorities and things like that, because fundamentally, I think most people understand, they shouldn't be eating processed, ultra-processed food, and they should be doing exercise. But in reality, people are not doing those things. So it's funny because obviously we're big into the science and we talk about it every week, and nutrition, exercise, and other lifestyle components. But ultimately, when we're working with people, a lot of it is just motivation and getting people to change their mindsets. And that is really, quite frankly, 90% of what we do. Even though we're so into the science and research and showing people what to do, how to do it. But getting people to show up and getting people to be motivated and changing their perspective, I think, is really the high level. So you get the mindset right, the rest is pretty easy.
Yeah.
So priorities is kind of, I guess, a good place to start, because it is fascinating when you look at where we are even as a species. And I just, when I look around, it's like we always seem to have the wrong priorities, and that's kind of the biggest issue. That a great example, and I always think of this as an interesting one, and this is one simple little thing that if you could get people to change their perspective on this, it would completely transform their lives. And if we did it collectively as a society, it would change humanity. Not in a small way, in a huge way, and the knock-on effect would be massive. And it's literally the smallest little switch of a priority, and it's simply by looking at food as either food from the point of view of nutrition, and you're going to nourish your body for your health, and you're going to prioritize that, or you just look at food purely from the point of view of just taste, and you want to get that little bit of a pleasure hit while you bite into a donut or something. And just that simple switch would completely transform the world.
Or just switching the priority.
Yeah.
Because it's not wrong to want to eat something and enjoy it and be satisfied.
Yeah.
You know, it's just a disordered desire. It's like the health aspect has to come first, and then if you can make it taste good also,
exactly.
There you go.
And that's it. So literally what you said there, that attitude, if everybody had that attitude, it would even have an enormous economic impact. So we're now up to $4.3 trillion that we're spending on healthcare. And it's crippling the economy. It's the number one reason for bankruptcy for people. And a lot of that is just because of our metabolic health, which is that's
got to affect like insurance rates and everything too, right?
Oh,
because we're paying for the majority of people who are super unhealthy with metabolic disease.
Yeah, because 80% of the cost of that is metabolic health, which is, at the worst case, you could say it could be reduced in half. But I mean, any expert in this area would say, well, yeah, we could reduce that way, way down, just by cutting out the ultra-processed food and eating real food. I mean, it's something that's so basic in one level, and it would just, I mean, if you're an alien and you came to this planet, I know there's all this news about UFOs and stuff, which is hilarious. But anyway, if you came to this planet as an alien species and you go, what is wrong with these people? They're literally poisoning themselves, and then they're creating this terrible economy, and the knock-on effect is, I mean, literally people are less happy, and there's more depression, so it's mental as well as physical. So we're sacrificing everything. Why? Because we want a few seconds of pleasure when we bite into some rubbishy, ultra-processed junk. I mean, that's what we're sacrificing everything for that.
Well, think about the roll-on effect or the rollover effect of that. Like, if we could apply this discipline or the reordering of desires into this, imagine how much a rollover it's going to have in everything else in your life too. If you can start to like control these things, instead of just reaching for the first thing that's going to grab you pleasure. What if you do the thing that's going to have a positive effect in the long run?
Yeah.
It's such a human issue.
Yeah. Because I mean, even if you can, like, how many seconds even of that little bit of pleasure that you get, and count that up. Like, okay, I have my crappy food donut thing or whatever. Okay, bite into it. Oh, that's sweet or whatever. That's nice. Okay, like, what are you talking? I don't know. 20 seconds, maybe a couple of minutes. I don't know, but it's not a lot.
Do you remember a few weeks ago, like, we literally we tested this? We were in the kitchen, everyone, and he was like, "Oh, it's so stupid. Like, no one can control their desire to get some pleasure." And he's like, "Here, let's see how long it takes." And he takes a bite of food. He's like, "Okay, maybe 25 seconds total. Now it's gone."
Yeah. And then you're sacrificing hours of...
I would say it was a really good study.
I know.
Scientific
but I mean,
study.
you're sacrificing the rest of your life having, because all these things lead to diabetes and obesity and depression and all of these things. Because, when I look at that, you see, that's the thing. What I look at and what I see, I'm looking at that not as a thing that's going to give me pleasure. I'm looking at it, wow, this is going to raise my blood glucose. I'm going to get this spike. Then it's going to drop. I'm going to feel like lethargic for a few hours.
You just have to go, is it worth it?
Yeah, and
over
then
time.
the
I know what it's going to
inflammation.
do to me.
Exactly, yeah. So when you really see, like, I'm looking at it and going, wow, okay, there's a lot of sugar in there. There's all those industrial seed oils, which is terrible for inflammation, and the processed grains. So the three worst things that we talk about in under nutrition. So it's literally poison, you know. So I'm going to take this. I get my 30 seconds, tiny little bit of pleasure hit. And then I'm sacrificing my whole quality of life for the rest of my life, and then health implications and everything as a result of that.
Yeah.
It's actually insane. We are insane as a species. And all we got to do is switch back, because every other species, and humans up until very recently, we always prioritized health, because we want to have really good health, vibrant health, and we would think about, you know, even the future species and for kids, and everything was a priority to, you know, get better, healthier, fitter, etc. Like, it was always been like that. And it's a very short amount of time, like 50, 100 years, that we've just suddenly now and it's funny because working with people now 30 years, I've noticed that switch getting worse and worse. So 30 years ago, people go, oh, I want to get into shape. Okay, eat this, don't eat that, boom, away you go. That's it. Now it's like, well, what am I going to eat for this? It has to taste really good. That's always their priority, is taste. So it's like, well, okay, eat this. Oh, well, I couldn't do that. Okay, well, what about this? Okay, what about, you know, you have to keep coming up with all these alternatives, and it gets crazy. And I'm not saying things have to taste terrible, but even it just doesn't have to taste like
Make some pretty
amazing
good meals.
Like, you don't have to get this. It used to be dessert was like this kind of small little thing that once in a while you might do. Now every single meal, people have to get this kind of dopamine hit.
Trash. I thought the world has ended. There's a loud bang. Well, okay, so I'm assuming it's not as simple as just thinking, okay, hey, I'm going to reprioritize these things, and I'm going to put function or whatever ahead of taste. Is it that simple, or do you have tools for us when looking specifically at food?
I mean, so there's so many different levels, and this is the thing when you're working with people and you do health coaching, because true health coaching is a lot of psychology in it and behavior change. So we'll talk a lot about the different aspects of that, and we can kind of go into it. But for some people, it could just be as simple as just sitting down and going, is it really worth it? And they could just logically, now not most people, it's like I said, I'll go through the actual behavior change mechanisms, but for some people, it could just be a question of, yeah, do I really want to sacrifice my whole quality of life, you know, even how long I'm going to live, how good I feel, my energy, even my mental state, just for those few seconds of thing, and just literally make that switch right now. Like, I mean, some people could do that. So even some people listening to this right now go, yeah, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I want to feel good 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, not just a few seconds here and there. And that's literally what you're giving up. Now, there are obviously all these mechanisms, and, you know, these food companies know what they're doing, and they're engineered that way. There's product placement everywhere. Even when you're watching a show, you'll notice that the labels are always pointing towards the camera. So they're very smart. There's marketing, there's advertising.
You're fighting a lot of different things.
Yeah, and even on
choose the right stuff.
And they're going to fund things where you can't even, now you have to agree that pizza's a vegetable for kids' schools. And like, it gets crazy.
Oh, God.
You know, all these things, you know, so it's hard to change, because once these, you know, all the money goes to these corporations and they're going to control the narrative.
Okay,
and
whoa.
Crazy.
Take the tin hat off.
Well, that's, they're facts.
I know. It really is. And pharmaceuticals and yeah, I know. So I was just going to say, one of the biggest things that it's so small, but I think one of the biggest, like one of the most positive things for my diet the last few years, it was probably, I want to say maybe like 5 or so years ago, but I'm sure I learned it from you, but I just started thinking food is fuel. And then every time I eat now, I just think food is fuel, and I'm like, okay, is this helping or hurting? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like that simple switch helps me prioritize.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, okay, I worked out, I need to make sure I get enough protein in, so I'm building my muscle, and okay, and I know I need some fuel source here. What's the better option here, you know?
Yeah.
This super high glycemic carb or maybe some fats here, you know?
Yeah.
And just that simple thing is really, I think, changed the way I eat every day.
Yeah. Because even if you think, I mean, I just look at it, even for the next few hours, how am I going to feel when I eat this food?
Mm-hmm.
So there's no question if you eat some super high glycemic, ultra processed, you know, the next couple of hours, you're going to get a blood sugar spike. It's going to crash, and then you're going to feel lethargic. You're just not going to feel good. So you're even sacrificing the next few hours, even leaving aside all the rest and the long-term effects of these things. So even just very straightforward, do you want to feel good for a couple of minutes, or do you want to feel good for a couple of hours?
Right.
Simple as that. So when you start to look at your food, if you can really genuinely start to contrast those two things. So again, if I've a donut in one hand and like an avocado or something else in the other hand, well, one's going to really be nutrient dense. It's going to give me good energy levels. It's going to feel good, and the other one's not. Very simple. And when you start to really kind of apply that, you start to rewire the brain the more you understand. So education, I think, is a really good kind of tool. The more you understand about how inflammation will literally make you feel depressed, you're less likely to reach for that. And then you start to associate, because a lot of things is just associational in our brain. So we think certain things, and again, if you look at the marketing and advertising, they know this really well, because you'll see like big companies, the biggest brands in the world, they'll associate it with certain emotions. So for instance, enjoyment and a certain soda that I'm not going to mention the name of it, but I think most people watching will very quickly enjoy a certain soda. So the enjoyment is associated with that. So then when you see that advertising like constantly throughout, and the ad and the colors and everything in the ads, it starts to make that connection. So you just think, oh, I want to feel good, enjoyment, and you reach for it. It's just that association.
Too, it also plays into like the nostalgia thing. It's like, oh man, I want to have that soda and pizza because, man, when I was 6, we used to have that on Friday nights, and that makes me so happy. And you know, it's going to bring up all those emotions. And you think about how hard it is to break those habits. It makes sense because they're playing into your nostalgia and your emotions,
and they're spending billions.
And they're starting when you're a little kid. So it's so hard to break.
And these companies are spending billions on research and marketing and advertising and all these things. So they're not doing it because it doesn't work.
Right.
They're not doing it because it doesn't work. They're not going to do, it's not sort of charity, oh yeah, we'll just spend lots of money and give it to advertising. You know, they're doing it because it works and it increases their sales.
Well, it's so funny. It's like McDonald's is one of the biggest sponsors of like the Olympics. It's like, come on, there's a little bit of a disconnect here. This is not what's fueling your athletes that you're watching, you know?
Yeah, and then again, you're going to see that association because it used to be happiness, like the Happy Meal or whatever. Now they're going for a much bigger, stronger emotion, which is love. I'm loving it. It's kind of fascinating when you start to understand the psychology of marketing and advertising.
It's messed up on so many levels.
Yeah, but I mean,
devaluing love. Well,
yeah. So, but they, you know, again, they know what they're doing. But that's the thing. It's all associational. Now you can sort of take control of that process yourself by, and I think education is a good way, but really kind of making that kind of linking, oh, if I really know that these nutrient-dense real foods makes me feel really good, and you start to understand that more and more, and then you associate those foods with, wow, I'm going to feel great. Like, it's funny when, like, I've always found nutrition really magic. Actually, like, wow, we can change and exercise, of course. Like, I think it's a gift. I think it's this incredible, wow, we're not just stuck. We can actually change how you look, how you feel, your energy, even your brain, and how you think, your level of depression and how good you feel. All of these things are malleable. So to me, it's like being a wizard or a magician or something. I can just change the type of nutrients that I take in, the type of food, and feel like different. I can eat protein and do resistance training, and I can actually change my physical being and grow muscles, you know, and I can burn more fat, and it's magic. To me, it's a gift where when I work with people and say, okay, here we're going to change what you eat, they're like, oh my gosh. I'm like, this is
You're
amazing.
losing a part of them.
They're like,
instead of
oh, I
gaining
can't
freedom
eat
and all this.
this crappy food. And I'm like, no, this is amazing. You can actually change your whole life, your whole quality of life can absolutely change just simply by changing what you, from your hand, what you put in your mouth. Like it's remarkable. So it's kind of funny how people see that as a negative, and I see it as the most incredible, magical thing ever. You can actually, you know.
Also, it's like your eyes are going to be open and your taste buds are going to be open to like, there are like real whole foods that are prepared well are freaking delicious. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I feel like people are like, well, okay, I'm going to give up taste and flavor and pleasure for health.
Yeah.
It's like, no. It's like maybe you're losing the junk, but you're gaining a whole new world of possibilities that maybe you haven't explored.
Absolutely.
Maybe you'll start to appreciate those things and then find pleasure in them too, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, you go, like, when you really get into the best tasting food, it's actually good quality when you stick with the natural stuff. But even if, now, and this isn't the case, but even if it tasted bad to eat just real natural food, even if it was negative, I'd still do it because it's only a few seconds and then my whole life is amazing. Or I don't do it and my whole life is terrible, but I get a few seconds of, you know, this little pleasure hit. So it's totally, like, if you could really start to think like that, even this alone, for some people might be enough to go, yeah, this is stupid. I'm going to stop being insane and I'm going to have a great life just by making that one simple switch of that little priority where food is fuel, as you said, or you look at it as nourishment, or even one of the clients was saying to me, yeah, it's like, do you live to eat or eat to live? We're at a strange moment in time, I think, in humanity where we've never been so unhealthy and so unhappy. And yet, we're in this incredible world. We've never have as much great stuff as well, like technology and information. So we're in a position where we could literally have a utopia. We know everything about psychology, childhood development psychology, nutrition, exercise. We've never known as much. And if we got the best information and had it out there, we'd be practically living in a utopia. And yet we're never been so unhealthy and so unhappy. So what's it all about? It's really weird. And it's good to think that, yeah, it is weird, because until maybe that's, you know, you need that to go, yeah, let's snap out of this weird sort of daze that we're in, not looking at what's important in life. And if we could make that switch, wow, it would be huge. So we can obviously go into the more detailed psychology and, you know, behavior change, habit change, how it works, the psychology of it, and rewards and cues and all those things. So we can kind of look at all that. But I think, yeah, just on the bigger picture, getting that across, and I will probably repeat it another 100 times throughout this podcast, because it's not talked about enough. And maybe we could jump into some examples or anything else. So if there's anything that comes into your mind, just throw it out there. But that to me is like, wow, if we could just mentally change our attitude to food, it would just change the world.
Yeah.
And of course, exercise. Again, it's one of those areas where I think, you know, and again, someone like Dr. Peter T, he's great at the math and he goes through the details, where he explains that even compared to smoking, that like smoking obviously we know is really bad for your health and it will have, you know, really bad implications on lung cancer and so on. And yet exercising compared to not exercising is a much bigger switch. So in other words, if you smoked and exercised, that's better than someone who doesn't smoke and doesn't exercise, which is shocking.
That's crazy.
That's shocking, but it's true. It's actually true. And he goes through that. So he said, like, if somebody exercises compared to not, their chances of dying, even within that year, is 50% if you exercise. Like, cuts your chances of dying in half. That's huge.
That's crazy.
Way more than any other intervention that you can possibly think of.
Wow.
So for sure, nutrition and then exercise. And again, it's just that, again, I think sometimes just having a clearer picture in your mind of what it means, that the body is designed for movement. And I think we talked about this in the podcast, that movement is life, stagnation is death. And if you want to be alive and all your cells to be alive and have an incredible life and thrive, it's a lot of rhyming going
Yeah,
on
that was
there.
really, with the Irish accent too, that was like really nice. I was like, wow.
Okay. So
Thriving,
anyway, I
thriving.
didn't mean that. But yeah, I mean, it really is that where, wow, movement is life. You get that going and you really are, your whole quality of life is going to elevate. So when you start to think like that, you're going to enjoy movement rather than seeing it as this chore. Oh my God, I have to exercise. It's like, wow, isn't it amazing that I can move throughout the world, and it's great.
Yeah.
It's just this another
let's
gift. that we
look at
have.
exercise for a minute, because I think one of the hardest things with exercise is establishing a habit. And then once you have the habit, it's pretty easy. It's a habit, it's pretty easy to maintain it. So how do we go from being stagnant, not exercising, being pretty opposed to it, to, getting in the first few weeks and starting a habit that's going to last?
Yeah. So
you're not required, you're not focusing on, or you're not just relying on motivation to go to the gym. It's a habit. It's part of your lifestyle.
Yeah.
How do you make that change?
Yeah. So, and it's going to be, the answer is going to be different for everybody. And that's the tricky thing, to try to just go, okay, here's the answer. Because for some people, the answer is this, some people's that. But, from working with people for thousands of people over 30 years, you start to gain a lot of insights into these things. So for instance, for some people, they just need accountability. So quite frankly, that's why a lot of people come to us, because they know if they join and they sign up, and then you got to come for an appointment, you're much more likely to show up.
You're investing your finances.
Yeah, you're going to put your money down and you go, okay, well now I'm going to have to follow through because I just signed up for this course. That helps. So all these things, and that's, we learned over the years, and we structured it around that. So we noticed, for instance, if we just had people come whenever they choose and there wasn't appointment-based, people wouldn't turn up as much. Whereas if you have an appointment and you go, oh yeah, I booked in at 6 o'clock and I'm going to be there, my trainer's going to be waiting for me, and they're going to, they're going to say, why didn't you turn up? If you don't, you're much more likely to show up.
Yeah.
Right? So, if you have a gym membership and you go, oh yeah, I'll go later or whatever, but there's no appointment structure. That was a huge thing that we found made a big difference, just having appointments. And we're very result oriented, because a lot of gyms, quite frankly, their business model relies on the fact that most people won't show up.
Exactly.
It's called the 10% rule in the
Right.
business. So, these big box gyms, they'll have like 10,000 members, but they don't even have parking for 1,000. So they don't want people to turn up all the time, because they'd be out of business, quite frankly. Whereas we work on the whole basis of getting results. It's a very different structure, and we obviously have groups and classes and stuff like that. So we have a whole system that if people aren't showing up, we'll reach out to them. But going back to just, okay, what is going to motivate people? So accountability, so that's one.
Can you,
And
really
that could
quick,
be,
while we're on accountability, any other ideas that come to your head of, come to your mind of getting accountability? Obviously, you can get a trainer. You could,
a friend.
Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I was going to
Just have
say,
like an accountability buddy.
Yeah, you could just say, okay, if you happen to have someone like a friend or something, and say, okay, let's meet and we'll go for a walk. Like just even as simple as that, and every day or every other day, we'll go for a walk in the morning or in the evening or whatever, but then you're way more likely to do it. And that actually is shown to be very effective, that when you team up with a friend or a family person or anybody like that, it improves the results. I can't remember, because I know we had the actual statistics or whatever, but you're like 2 or 3 times more likely to do it and succeed than if you're on your own. So that definitely can help a lot of people. So yeah, so definitely the accountability or teaming up with someone is huge. And so that
There's even an aspect of, even if you do just have a gym membership at like a big box gym, there is a sort of a accountability thing in there of, okay, I'm not just going to sit in my basement and work out where no one's going to see what I do. It's like, I'm going to go into a gym, and it's, once you're in a gym, it's a whole lot harder to just sit there on your phone the entire time when there's a bunch of people around you working hard. There's kind of a built-in accountability thing. Although you do see a lot of people on their phones.
I was just going to say, more recently than ever, you know, because even I went to a gym there, and oh my gosh, all I see are people sitting down on their phones most of the time. It drives me crazy.
It's kind of
when you
sad.
try to get a workout in and you're waiting for the machine, and they camp now. I don't know what this thing is. They've got their bag and their towel, and they got their phone and their headphones. Oh, it's a freaking. It's like, I'm like, are you going to camp here? Are you living here now? I mean, are you going to?
We're getting on a tangent here, but I literally,
do
I one time in Atlanta was waiting for a bicep curl machine. I went up to the machine, the guy was on it, and it was going to be like one of my first exercises. And I went, did my entire workout, came back, and he was still on it. Oh. It was like 23 minutes later. Wow. And he had done like one set. And I was like, bro.
I know.
So perhaps going out and working out in public could bring some accountability, but it also might turn you into a camper. So don't be a camper.
Yeah.
Don't do bicep curls in the squat rack either. That's another pro tip. All right.
Yeah.
Moving on. Where were you heading with all this?
Accountability
is one aspect.
Yeah, accountability, teaming up with a friend or somebody like that is going to improve your chances of success hugely. And then, of course, the education, what I was saying, and the associations. So they're all things that I think can make a big difference. So, yeah, I mean, obviously having actual goals as well, and having very definite goals.
Also achievable goals.
Yeah.
You know, if it's 5 pounds and that's a lot easier to get to. Once you hit that, it's like, all right, I've achieved. Let's keep going.
Yeah.
Instead of I must, lose this giant number in X amount of time,
Yeah, and it's a balance because the goal's got to be big and exciting enough to motivate you, and then not too big that it overwhelms you. So it's always getting into that sort of not too easy, not too difficult to get into that flow state. It's sort of just that perfect balance where it's just the amount that's going to get you to succeed. So that's huge. So yeah, like I said, it's so different for different people because people are faced with so many different things. And it is kind of funny because there's always this debate about whether it's just personal choice and it's just people are too lazy or whether there's a sort of a systemic issue. And I think it's both. I think I can really see the systemic because you can see socioeconomic aspects to people's health and they've got so much stress going on in their lives and they just don't have the wherewithal. So I can see that. I mean, it comes up in the data all the time. But then there's a lot of people that are in a position that they can make a change. And I think if they can make the change, the people that are in a position that they can, it'll have a knock-on effect. And then it'll help because it'll sort of change the structure even of the systems and structures. Because if everybody that can eat healthy, eats healthy and does all the right things, then even it changes the industries because that's where the money's going. So, and then it'll have a knock-on effect for everybody, which I think is important as well. Because I think a lot about these things, like how do you really get people to be healthier on a larger scale? And that's the way I kind of see it, is that first of all, we got to get the right information, good education, the priorities. I mean, dare I say it, but I don't know if it's too soon, but we've just gone through a big, health pandemic with no mention of health. Yep. So I'm not going to get into because I think it's still too soon, even though there's amazing data already coming out about the various different interventions and what worked, what didn't, and we could argue forever on that, and there's plenty of places to go for all those debates. But my big point is that no question, the number one thing, the most important thing when during the pandemic was a person's metabolic health, and there was no even mention of it.
Yeah.
And I just found that, like, we took so much action. We literally turned the world upside down. We literally shut everything. We did so many interventions for this. And look, if from a point of view of we're trying to save lives, we didn't want people to die, that's a good thing. We were willing to do whatever it took. Now, whether or not those things were good or bad in the end, again, we'll park that one because it's probably too soon. But not prioritizing health was a disaster, and for sure, absolutely for sure, and I've already seen so much data that the negative implications are going to last decades, lifetimes for younger people. Because what happened, and this, like, I actually did a little video, we can maybe do a link to this. It was only a few weeks into the pandemic, about 6 or 8 weeks into it. And I was saying, look, this could be a perfect storm, because what are we doing? We're getting people to exercise less. And already the data was showing that people were exercising 50%, so literally half. And it's not like people were exercising enough beforehand, but now you've cut exercise in half. And then you've increased the consumption of ultra-processed food, like there's called the comfort foods. But alcohol consumption, drug use, everything went up because of the stress and whatever. And you're putting people's lives upside down. So what are you doing? Exercising less, eating more ultra-processed food. And the result was huge increases in diabetes, in metabolic health issues, depression, and also you're also seeing, aside from the diabetes and all of those things, but just, I mean, obviously financial as well. So you're really putting so much pressure on people, and you're literally driving health in the wrong direction. And the problem is, if it was only, because initially it was only, it's only going to happen for 2 weeks, right? Remember, flatten the curve?
Oh yeah, I remember.
2 years later, we were still locked up. You know, it was crazy. But the implications of that are going to be long lasting, because already, and I've seen actual real research where, for instance, childhood diabetes jumped up over 70%, and they're already seeing that that's not coming back. Because I know, because literally what we're talking about, behavior change is not easy. It's not easy. So
you lock somebody up for 2 years with no exercise and bad eating habits.
Exactly. Yeah. And then the long-term implications are terrible. So metabolic health, because 95% of people that died had on average 4 comorbidities. So if the emphasis was, look, and regardless of whether you agree or disagree with various different interventions, at the very least, there should have been a massive emphasis. Okay, well, look, now you're going to be at home. You got to make up for this by exercising more. That should have been like point number 1. Point number 2, reduce your consumption of ultra-processed food and try to eat more real food while we're doing this. So regardless of whether you agree, disagree, and what the science is going to show in the next few years, pretty clear. But anyway, it's genuinely, like, that should have been the message. There's what's the downside of telling people to be healthy? I don't understand. Exercise more, eat less processed food.
The downside is it doesn't require just a simple fix from a pill, and it takes effort.
Well,
I guess.
Yeah, but I mean, they're willing to do so many other things and change our whole behavior and our actions and everything. Like in one sense,
to imply exercise would be fat shaming.
Well, I mean, okay, but regardless of weight, Thurston. I mean, exercise is just good for your health. So anyway,
there you go.
But these things really do make a difference, and would have made a difference. So again, we're facing, we are in already a crisis of metabolic health, because the amount of people that die needlessly of poor metabolic health that wasn't happening 50 or 100 years ago. So millions and millions, way more than have died during the pandemic, way more people die every single year. Because even at the height of it, the pandemic was number 3 on the list. So nowhere close to metabolic health, the amount of people dying from metabolic health, which we know that these interventions can work on a big scale, that if everybody was doing the right things, we'd be saving millions of lives. But it's not even headline news. I mean, again, we're talking about priorities. It's like metabolic health surely should be number one. I mean, anyway, it's huge, but we seem to completely ignore it.
Yep.
But maybe we should jump into really good practical tips for people, because I can go off on tangents when it goes.
I think the tangent was nice and necessary. Yeah, I mean, let's get into it.
Yeah, so one of the things is habit change.
Yes.
So habits are just
Power of
things.
habit.
Yeah, power of habit. Yeah, and
that's
actually a great book,
one.
which I recommend to people. And we use those techniques a lot with people. So we just kind of look at it. There's this like circle where what's the trigger? You know, so what is it that's causing you to have a certain habit, and then what is the action, and then what's the reward? So when you start to break those things down, it's kind of interesting, and then what you can do is replace it. So say, for instance, you know, maybe during the day at a certain point of time, you feel bored, and maybe out of boredom, you go and
grab chips,
eat some like food that is not healthy, and you don't want to be doing it. So you break that down. Okay, well, what is it? Is it a certain time during the day? Is it a certain emotion that you're feeling? Are you tired? Are you feeling bored? Are you feeling lonely? Yeah, it could be any of these emotions. And yeah, because I mean, we obviously emotional eating is a huge thing that we come across with people all the time. So you find out what that is. What is it that the action and the reward? So if it's okay, well, I'll eat to satisfy that. Is there something else that you could do? And then you can test that and try that. And this has actually worked. And again, it's going to be different for everybody. And I highly recommend that book, Power of Habit, because when you really see this and break it down, and you can change these, this process, very quickly you can find, okay, maybe I'll just go for a walk around the block. Maybe I'll talk to a friend, you know, because it could be during work, and you just say, go to a colleague and have a chat. Maybe you'll feel great from the social interaction.
Maybe you'll go into the gym.
You get a workout. Maybe you'll go to work out, and you get all the endorphins, and you feel good, and the cannabinoids, and all these things that are released during exercise. So, yeah, so you just got to find these other things. And then, of course, developing healthy habits. It's kind of funny because when you start to do this, it actually becomes, once you do this and you change a few of these, you realize they're malleable. So I always recommend people start with things that are not overwhelming, because like if they're really strong emotions and really strong attachments to things, you're better off starting with something that's not quite as, it's like weights. You're not going to jump in and do a 400-pound squat. Let's just start with 50 pounds and then 60 pounds and gradually work your way up. So pick a few habits that you think, okay, yeah, that's not a, that's not a really, really drastic one. Let's start with an easier one. And you start to change that and you go, I changed that. Now I'll go this one and this one.
You got a little bit more willpower.
And then you realize, wow, these are malleable. I can actually change my habits. And once you change them, then you're locking in a new, healthier habit. And then it becomes difficult to be unhealthy, weirdly enough. You really can get to the point. It's funny. I don't know if we talked about this before, but when we did the masterclass videos, on one of them I was obviously showing how much sugar was in foods, and I was comparing ultra-processed foods to real foods. So I had to go to the store to pick out all these ultra-processed food. I was in the store for almost an hour because I didn't know where all this ultra-processed food was, because I never go to those aisles and pick them up. I'm like, which aisle are the cookies on, or which aisle are this? I was going to say the brand names, but I don't want to get into any trouble. So, but anyway,
McDonald's is already coming for us today. But they can take us down.
But anyway, like I'm kind of looking at trying to find all these foods, because I'm used to going to a healthier type of store, and I go to certain places where the healthier food is. It just becomes a habit, and then it's difficult to actually go and find, because if you said, okay, I don't even know what fast food places, where they are, I'd have to look them up and go out of my way to be unhealthy. And then obviously when I'm working with people, it's the opposite way around. They've got unhealthy habits.
How can I possibly find something that's healthy?
Yeah, and they're going to have to then, well, I'm not used to going there or eating that, or whatever it is. So it's a process. So initially, it's always going to be a little bit more effort. But then you develop these new healthy habits, and then it becomes literally to the point where it's effortless.
Yeah, and how long does that usually take? How long of a practice do you have to make a habit before it really sticks? I know there's
all
metric,
this thing about,
50 times
21
or
days or
yeah.
30 days, and I've seen kind of mixed stuff on that, but generally I do think it's not a bad rule of thumb, like 3 to 4 weeks. Once you do something, it generally kind of sticks.
And in that 3 or 4 weeks, you're really just relying on discipline and willpower.
Yeah.
Until it's almost effortless.
Yeah. I just think, I mean, and the other thing that I do is whenever I want to do something and make a change, and try to focus on the positives rather than the negatives. So people go, oh my God, it's another day that I can't eat a donut, or they can really dwell on the negative, or like, wow, it's another day I'm one step closer to my goal. I'm going to look better, feel better, my life is going to be better, I'm going to have better health, my blood sugar is going to be better, all of these things, and then the implications of that. So if you really start to think of, wow, that's going to mean I'm going to have more energy to spend with my kids, my family, my job, my career, my hobbies, or whatever it is. So really get focused on all the positive aspects. And then it doesn't seem like such an effort. Like if all you're thinking about is what you can't do, that's going to be harder. But if you think about, wow, this is going to allow me, like another little thing, and these are just little, I guess, personal things about my mindset and how I kind of see it and reframe it in my mind. But something that people think is like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be so restricted. They think of eating healthy and having a healthy lifestyle as, oh, I got to follow all these rules and regulations, and it's very restrictive, and I'm giving up my freedom, right? Reframe.
Flip it, yeah.
Yeah, because to me, well, if you're really free, then you're free to choose the type of life that you want to have, and you are in control.
Well, and
you have that control. Say, I'm going to have great energy and be in great shape and have great health. That's freedom to me.
Yeah, but what you're really losing is a little bit of pleasure from eating food, and then what you're gaining is so much.
Yeah.
Gaining health and freedom. And it outweighs.
Because I I'm big into, I love freedom and having this, it's
Thurston
one of my
loves
favorite
America.
words. Yes, I do. But the freedom is awesome, but I see freedom as having that control, if you know what I mean. So I feel like the system wants me, because
to be a
these
slave.
companies, they want me to eat junk food and do all these things. But I'm free of that. Like I've kind of I've snapped out of that daze. It's like the hypnosis that people are in. Because I see it like that when people are lining up for their so-called coffees, but it's just syrups and sugar. They're addicted to sugar. And there is addiction properties and stuff like that going on with all of this.
Yeah.
But to me, it's like they're trapped. They're trapped in this kind of hypnosis almost. So being healthy is a freedom rather than, oh my gosh, I'm no longer free because I have to eat healthy. It's the opposite. So even those little switches, for some people that might, to me, it's a big thing. Yeah, that reframe to me, it's like, wow, and very empowering. Probably the most empowering thing I remember, is, and I went from one extreme to the other. I was working in a bar, I smoked, I drank. This when I was this literally 30 years ago. And then I joined the gym, and then the manager, he was awesome. He just said, okay, here's what you're eating. Really strict diet. I didn't know that this was supposed to be difficult, so I just did it.
Yeah.
And it was a crazy, same meal, breakfast, lunch, dinner for 6 weeks. But I was like, okay, this is what you do.
Yeah.
And then I started to get stronger and grow muscles. But I remember walking down the street one day and feeling like, wow, this is amazing. I can just control literally what I eat and do a little bit of exercise, and my whole life is changing. My whole body is changing. It's amazing. And I felt so empowered. I said, well, if I can do this, I can do anything. Because to me, everybody else was stuck in this hypnosis, and they were trapped. And they couldn't escape from that, because nobody chooses to be not healthy. Well, almost nobody.
Yeah.
People want to have great health. People want to be happy. People want to have a good frame of mind. They want to have a long life and to thrive
Yeah.
and to operate at their potential. Because that is one of the scariest things to me, is to get to your end of your life and go, oh, you only operated at 2% of your potential.
Right. Yeah.
That would be shocking to me.
It might sound stupid, but it's as simple as you might need to say you're, I don't know, name a habit. It could be not consuming liquid calories or something, or I'm going to walk 10,000 steps a day. You know, that thing. Literally write out a pros and cons list and look at the facts on both sides.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm going to lose 45 minutes of my day of what I use, my normal paid programming. Okay, but I'm going to gain this. And it's like, look at the facts.
Yeah.
And it'll probably jump out and be very clear to you, you know, what you're gaining. That'll help you start to reframe.
Exactly, because another big one, because this is one of our, and we get, over the years, you realize all the rebuttals, because one of the big things, I'm too busy to work out. And first of all, our workouts are only 20 minutes, hard to argue that. But here's the other one, because people, oh, well, I got to work and I've got a deadline and I've got this. I said, yeah, but when you work out, and there's really solid research on this, your productivity minimum jumps up 10%. So say if you're working on a project and you're more productive, 10 hours, you only need to do like 8.5 hours to get the same amount of work that normally would take 10 hours.
Wow.
So you can actually free up a lot of time by
Especially
working
by
out.
doing a 20-minute workout.
Yeah.
It's not taking up that much time, and then the gain on the other end of it's huge.
Exactly, and your energy increase as well, because there's only so many hours in the day, but how much energy have you got?
Yeah.
So again, by doing these things, and your energy level is way up, because normally people, they work and by the time they get home, they're just tired and they're just going to sit down, watch TV and so on. But if you have like an extra, like physically, because even with your metabolism and stuff, your energy increase, you'll actually feel like you've got an extra 3 hours of energy a day.
Right.
So in the evening time, you feel more energetic. So instead of just collapsing in front of on the sofa in front of the TV or whatever, you're like, okay, I'm going to play with my kids, or I'm going to have, pick up dancing or do a hobby, or if you want to work even harder for the workaholics.
Or go for a walk, or have a conversation.
Yeah,
something
socialize with your family, with
you
friends.
Don't have to veg
so your
out.
whole quality of life is going to, you've got this extra, because normally you just write it off and you wait for the weekends.
Yeah, right.
But if you have this great energy throughout the day, then you've got this whole extra like chunk of time, at least 3 hours a day, that's again going to transform the quality of your life. So I mean, I do long hours here. I'm generally doing about 12 hours a day, but I go home and I've got great energy, so I can play with Zoe for hours, and she's 3.5. She's got more energy than I do, but then I've got the energy to do that. So it's awesome. It's just having that extra dimension. So these are all things that I think if you really understand it, and you can really go, wow, yeah, this. And if some of these points resonate with you, it could be enough to make that switch to motivate you to be so much healthier. And then the other one that I really think is another one that motivates me. So a lot of these things are personal, but hopefully some of these will resonate with people. But is that then whatever you do has such a knock-on effect with other people. And that's true negatively or positively, and there's a lot of research on this. So in other words, if your friends are all unhealthy, you're more likely to be unhealthy. But if you're healthy, you're going to have a knock-on effect with everybody around you.
Yep.
So for
true.
some people, and this I've noticed with this, working with people, their motivation could be because they want to have a really positive impact on their family, on their kids, on their spouse, on their friends. So by you being healthy and making those switches, the knock-on effect is huge. Because I've always noticed that with our clients, is that when they make that switch and they start to get much healthier, then the people around them start to get healthier.
Wow.
And so on.
What a cool responsibility someone could take on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Of helping out their community, helping out their friends, their family. I just think about like a high achiever, like the classic dad breadwinner. His motivation is, I'm going to provide for my family. And it's like, well, you're providing a life and finances and stuff, but what if you were also providing the health and longevity because you were prioritizing it for yourself?
Yeah.
So then the trickle-on effect is you're going to bless your family with that too. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So there's quite a few points in there. Is there anything else that you think we should be covering when it comes to this? I mean, it's endless where we can go
I
with
was
it,
going to
but-
ask if you could, you talked about, taking on small habits and small changes at once before going to the giant one. Can you give some small habits that we could start to implement in our lives that would start to have we can start cranking up from there?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so one thing I try to recommend for people to do. I mean, aside from obviously, I love the resistance training, but it's just to sort of, get out and go for a little walk. I mean, it could be, treadmill at home, but nice to get out in the air, and the sunshine, of course, has great benefits. So a lot of people, they're more looking at their morning or evening routine. So it depends. Some people go straight to work early in the morning. So, I'm up at 5 a.m., so I'm not going to have much of a morning routine. I just got to come to work, but then I've got my evening routine. So whichever way around it is. So for instance, if you normally just roll out of bed, a lot of people are still working from home and they just roll out of bed onto the computer or something. And I'm like, well, look, get up 20 minutes earlier and just walk around the block. Or go for a little, it'd be great if you have a nice little
See the sun.
park or something, or and look, I know the first few days it's going to be effort, but if you can break that and create that habit, soon you'll love it and you'll feel so much better. You'll notice that your energy and your concentration and everything is way, way up just by getting that movement in. So it could be first thing in the morning, it could be a lunchtime, at your lunch break, just get out and move, walk. You will feel so much better. It's so good for you. It's very simple. I mean, we can all do it. So that's just a simple little thing that you could do that I think would make a huge difference.
Yeah.
It's like breaking the kind of the old habits. It's just we got into the habit of being lazy and just doing X, Y, and Z, and just coming up with simple little things like that. Whatever these little triggers are, it's hard to say because this is what we do in the consultations. Well, okay, what do you normally do when you wake up? And then I can kind of figure out what it is for each person. But that's just an example. So you got to apply it yourself in your own life. Just find that little thing that'll just break the kind of that old habit and start to create that new one.
Start to gain some control back.
Yeah.
One thing I like to have people do, I probably learned it from you, it's, okay, I'm not going to change my entire diet because it's too hard. Okay, first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to cut out liquid calories. It's like, okay, I'm going to take out the cream out of the coffee in the morning, and I'm going to start to be able to control that. And okay, there we go. I'm taking out the sugar, I'm taking out the coffee hit, or the cream hit in the morning.
Yeah.
All right, and then you can apply that. Okay, hey, now I'm not having 600 calories of wine in the evening. And then the trickle-on effect of that. It's little things. You're not having to completely change your diet, completely change things. But imagine if every day, all right, you know what? I can't commit to the big scary gym routine. I can't commit to changing my diet. It's too big. It's too much. Start small. Go for a walk. Cut out the sugar and the coffee in the morning. And see where that starts to take you. Little things,
Absolutely. And it's just so different for different people. And that's the one thing, because we've got a client here, only started 3 weeks ago, and he's now down 14 pounds. And he's like...
Can you code word?
You just trained him this morning. First thing this morning. And he's down 14 pounds. He likes to go scuba diving.
Oh, thank you.
Anyway, so he, just...
yeah, exactly.
He's just great because he's like, just tell me what to do. And we give him the strictest nutrition exercise, and he's just on it, and he's getting phenomenal results, and he's just going for it and making a huge shift, which is fantastic. But then I'd work with someone else who, I don't think I could change my diet at all. I said, well, do you think you could eat just a little bit more? Because it's easier to say, can you eat more protein? well, yeah, I can eat more protein. And I know that when they do, by default, they're going to eat less junk food.
Yeah.
You know, so simple little things,
Some
or more
people walk
fiber or
in
whatever.
from the kids end of the pool, and some people like to dive off the
Yeah.
diving board.
Yeah, so that's the kind of extremes where some people you can just go all in,
Yeah.
bump, and they'll go for it. And then other people, it's just making these small little switches that
Yeah.
gradually will change over time. But I've had people that because I used to think, oh, I don't know if long term or the changes are too small. But then some people, they keep doing it. And then the next month I'll say, okay, well, how about adding this little thing in or that? And then I remember and then in a year's time, they're all like super healthy, eating
Yeah.
everything, and they're just gradually done it step by step. So I think a lot of it is personality types, where they're at, because some people have got so much stresses in their lives, I don't want to add to the stress. And I'll say, no, don't go on a diet because you've got too much stress. And I'll focus on stress mitigation.
There you go.
And then they'll be in a position to make other changes. So you got to see where you're at, and you know, I think most people will sort of figure it out themselves. But that's obviously what we do with people. So.
Yeah. I was going to say one thing that works for me. I this might be like coming from like Jocko Willink or someone, but for me, there's a difference between discipline and motivation. And they're both tools to be used at different times. So discipline is more like a habit. It's that thing in me. It's built in. I'm going to go to the gym every day or whatever your routine is, because that's what I do. And it's built in. I know it's good for me. There's no question. It may not be the best workout every single day, but I'm going to go. And then motivation is relying on external factors. So it's like, okay, today I'm going to the gym, but boy, I'm not really feeling like it. Okay, how can I add an external factor? Like maybe today I'm going to add in that, I'm going to listen to that awesome music that's going to get me pumped up today. Or before I go, I'm going to listen to that motivating speech or whatever it is, that external factor that's going to help. But these can both be tools to use, you know, and try not to rely on the motivation 100%, but use it when you need it, you know?
Yeah, because surrounding yourself with all the things that's going to support your state of mind. So like, what kind of movie are you going to watch? Is it going to be an inspirational movie, or is it going to be a horror movie, you know? So, I mean, I know people like horror movies because it gets their, you know, excites their mind or whatever, but you really got to look at, well, are you looking and reading about positive things or negative things all the time? And then, well, how are you going to feel as a result of that? I mean, I got to watch that myself because obviously I'm big into health, but I keep seeing terrible data and information, and sometimes you go, oh my gosh, I thought 30 years ago we might be getting healthier, and now it's just
out the crap.
It's just, so sometimes you just gotta, okay, let's just focus on all the positive things and where people have succeeded, and then it kind of rubs off. It's your self-efficacy. So what you see, and that's a big thing that we do, is increase people's self-efficacy, their belief in themselves that they can achieve something. Because so in health coaching, there's two things we look at: is motivation, which obviously we're talking a lot about, but also confidence. So some people could be highly motivated, but they just don't have any self-belief. And some people, it's the other way around. I can do anything I want, but I'm just not that motivated to do it.
Right, there you go.
So we always look at, and even in the questionnaire we have both, with like confidence out of 10, and then your motivation out of 10. And that's a great way, and then we know how to work with them. So do we need to push the motivation button, or do we need to push the confidence button? So the self-efficacy, Albert Bandura, I've got that whole book. I must put it on the bookshelf. It's pretty awesome. But he has these 4 areas, and one is like your past. So if you have a string of successes, you're going to think you're going to succeed. If you have a string of failures, then you've got the people around you. Do they believe in you? And then other people, like if you look at other people and having role models, if they can do it, well, then I believe I can do it, and then your response to setback. So there's these kind of components that we use. So even when we share the results that people get, then it inspires other people. Well, if they can do it, then maybe I can do it. And then it just elevates, and then everyone's getting great results.
I've noticed, we have one guy in that kind of 9 o'clock session that's been doing great. He's been getting awesome results. His blood work came back. It's awesome.
Best ever, yeah.
You know what? That's rubbing off on the people in the 9 a.m. session.
Yeah.
They're like, man, he's killing it. And then they get more motivated to keep going. It's great. It's great.
For sure. So sharing the results, and that's what we were saying in a different way, but whatever you do, good or bad, you're a huge inspiration to everybody around you. So if you do the right thing, you're going to inspire everybody else. So that could be another motivational
Yeah.
factor. So, yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
So we could probably talk endlessly, but we better.
I know. Yeah. I
Got it
guess let's
somewhere.
wrap it up. I was just going to say, you know, so much of this is just reprioritizing or reorganizing our priorities. And, but yeah, I think those simple switches of, sorry, I went brain dead. I have no idea what I'm saying. Help me wrap this up. Cut that out, Ben.
Yeah, so yeah, a big thing I just think overall is really look at what's important that's going to make the biggest impact. And it takes a little bit of like taking a step back and go, what am I doing? And is this really what I want? So is what I'm doing creating the life that I want? What is the life that I want? And then even work backwards from there. And then go, well, which is more important? We keep going back to this, a few seconds of chewing something that sparks a little bit of a dopamine hit in your brain.
Little hitter.
Or having an incredible life where you're just thriving on all levels. You're happy, you're healthy and thriving and more productive. You know, to me, you just stack that and it just becomes a bit of a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And then obviously we've talked about all the little bits in between, a habit change. So you got to start with where you're at, but just see, can you start to play around with these and then you realize, whoa, this is malleable, I can change. That's one of the biggest things. It's so exciting. And I just think all these things are magic. I really do think nutrition is magic. I just think, wow, these nutrients, if I just change the composition of protein, etc., and micronutrients, it's going to change my physical being, my mental being. It's amazing. It's like, it's incredible that this is available to us. You know, I just think it's like, rather than looking at it as, oh my gosh, no, this is a gift. It really is a gift. So hopefully people will pick out at least some points that really do make a difference.
Yeah.
That's the idea.
All right, guys.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
See you then.